Hi, welcome back to the Busy Corner. This is lesson 5. Today I'm going to show you how to knit onto these half-inch rods. That wasn't my plan originally. I simply designed this with half-inch rods, this knitting stand, the tabletop knitting stand. Designed it with the half-inch rods so that the cover pipes that I wanted to use would all fit over it easily. But I thought, oh, what the heck. And frankly, it's much faster than knitting needles. I made this, it's a wide cowl. It is 1 ball of sheepish yarn. It's a 4 weight that I divided in half. So I used 2 strands of the sheepish, 1 strand of novelty yarn. I will sew it together for a wide cowl. It's 23 stitches, and I did it in a purl 1, knit 1, and I did it in 1 hour. Normally it would take me 2, 3, 4. Novelty yarn is so hard to work with anyway, especially eyelash. Here is a second piece I made. It is a long scarf that's going to get a fringe. I did this also in a purl 1, knit 1. It is 2 skeins of sheepish yarn, one with 2 strands, and 1 strand of that confetti mohair, and 13 stitches across. It took 2 hours, and it would take me easily 2 to 3 times that with knitting needles. So now that I have the technique down, I'm pretty much sold, and I think you will be too when you learn how to manipulate the yarn. So first we need to cast on. So first I'm going to only use 1 strand. This is a super bulky, just so you can really see what I'm doing with my fingers and what the stitches look like. So first I'm going to cast on, and we're going to do a purl 1, knit 1. That is a front 1, back 1 stitch throughout the whole pattern. And first you will cast on. If you want to, just remove one of your rods, and it doesn't matter if you start on the right or the left. It makes no difference. So first make your slip knot. And just for the sake of the video, we'll cast on 11 stitches. Normally you wouldn't want to take the whole pipe out. You'd almost need 2 hands to cast on, but you can do it this way. There's no tip, so you're going to have to give it a little bit of help when you make your slingshot. So here's your tail on the left, your working yarn on the right. Come under your thumb and help your rod under there by pulling it with your forefinger. So now your rod goes under there. Now it goes under the working yarn. The tail loop comes back over, and there's your second stitch. So under the tail, under the working yarn, this loop comes back over, 3. Under the tail, under the working yarn, that tail piece comes back over, there's 4, 5, there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, oops. It's a little awkward because there's no tip on here, but you wouldn't want it to be, and you would want these pipes to be hollow for what I'm going to show you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Alright, here we are. So, place your rod in there firmly and adjust them so that you have about that much space in between. Maybe a little more, just so you can see better here. Do it like that. You could see I could have done a better job lining my pieces up when I drilled them. Okay, so there's my tail. Here's my working yarn, and I'm going to be moving these stitches, and when I make my new stitch is coming to the left. So when I'm working from right to left, I want to have my working yarn in my right hand. I'm going to use my left hand to pull, bring your stitches closer to the end, but not too close, you don't want to drop them. Now bring off that first stitch and lay it over your working yarn. Then take your thumb and forefinger and grab that working yarn. Pull it through. This is your new stitch. And put it up on your left pipe. Snug it up. If you kind of put your hand here as you're pulling it, it'll make a nice, snug that up nicely for you. Now bring your yarn up. We're going to do a back stitch. This is your knit stitch. So use your right hand. You still have your yarn. Don't let go of that. Use your right hand to push that loop right onto your forefinger and drop it down. Lay your working yarn on top of the loop and use your finger to hook it. and grab the yarn and put it up on your pipe on the left. Snug. Leave your working yarn down. Bring your loop off. Going to make a front stitch. Grab it. Now the yarn comes up to make a back stitch. Use your hand to push that loop right onto your finger. Lay your working yarn over the loop. Use your finger to hook it. Pull it through, up on the pipe. Leave your yarn down. Off comes the next stitch. Lay your working yarn, lay that stitch over your working yarn and pull that loop through. Yarn comes up. We're going to make another back stitch. Push the stitch off onto your finger. Lay the working yarn over it. Hook it. Put it up on the pipe. Leave your yarn down. Off comes the next stitch. Now you can, again, with these front stitches, you have two options. You can hook it. You can just grab it like this. Whatever you feel comfortable. I think hooking this back stitch is about the only way to do it. But push it off. Have it on your finger. Put your yarn over it. Turn your hand so that you hook that yarn and put it up there. Here's another front stitch. Grab the yarn. One more of these back stitches. So again, you're using your right hand to push that stitch onto your left, laying the working yarn over it, hooking it, putting it up there. And now the last stitch was as a front stitch. Pull it up. Now you're ready to begin the next row. So now you're moving your stitches from your left rod to your right rod. Hold the yarn in your left hand. Use your right hand to bring the stitch off of the rod. Lay it on top of your working yarn. Grab your working yarn, put it up on your pipe. Snug it up. If you kind of just hold this loop loosely and pull your working yarn at the same time, that snugs it up just about where you'd like it. Works perfectly. So now take your yarn still in your left hand, use it, bring your stitches up a little bit closer, use it to push that stitch off and onto your forefinger. Now you see here's your bow tie thing. So this helps you do two things. It helps you hook that stitch, but it also helps you see where you're at. Every time you're working your stitch on these small rods, you're working them underneath your pipes and you're seeing each stitch as it comes off. No bow tie, so you know that has to be the correct, has to be a front stitch, so you're doing the correct motion. Now it comes up, we're going to do a back stitch, so push the stitch onto your forefinger, bring the yarn back down, lay it on top. You see there's that bow tie that I showed you in the last couple of videos. Hook it with your finger. Put it up on the pipe, give it a snug. Off comes your next stitch, which is a front stitch. Yarn comes up, pushes off the stitch, yarn and down over, pull it through and up on the pipe. Once you're doing this for a while, you will get very fast and find that you can even kind of let your mind wander, which is usually what happens to me anyway, and that's when I make a mistake. So that's another back stitch. So this should be another front stitch. Leave your yarn down. Yeah, front stitch. Another back stitch. Again, you're just push that right onto your finger so you have a hold of it. And this is your last stitch. It's a front stitch. You'll find, especially when you're working with multiple strands, those last couple stitches are tricky. So when you're working with those stitches, I'm going to move this over. When you're working with your stitches under the pipe like this, you can actually use your hands to keep the rest of the yarn on your pipes. This is every time you make a stitch you can check and see, yep, that's right. by keeping your stitch in your hand like this too, or I mean your working yarn, there's less likelihood that you're going to drop one of your strands if you're working with multiple strands of yarn. I'm going to show you one more thing. So, now we're back to the same thing we work. Your working yarn is still to the inside of your pipes. This time, you're going to put it in your left hand. The first stitch is always a little tricky. That's why I usually start with this front stitch. You pull it off. Now a back stitch. Again, just use this hand that has your yarn in it to push it off. You can also grab it with your thumb if that feels more comfortable. But choose something and stick with it, because that, whoops, see what happened there? That's why you want to have your hands under there. I don't have my hands under there because I don't want to be in the way of the camera, but there's a good example of working with these small pipes. Your stitches are tighter, therefore there's more of a chance that that is going to pull off there inadvertently. But you see what? If you work with your stitches right here in front of the knitting, that won't happen. Now, I'm going to make another back stitch here, and I'll show you one more thing. So, again, just using your finger, almost like a crochet hook, to hook that yarn, and it will just take a short while, and you will get very fast doing this. Now, let's say you realize that you think you've made a mistake. You're thinking about what you're going to make for dinner and not your knitting, and you think, you know, I think I just did a bunch of knit stitches. One at a time, pull them off and look and see. Sometimes I just undo it. This is the new stitch, what's on the rod. If I pull it off and grab this, this is the stitch from the previous row. Keep a hold of that and let the working yarn drop. Okay, that was the old stitch. And if I wanted to redo it, I would just put it back up here. Maybe it was this stitch I made the mistake on. Okay? Pull it off. This is the new stitch. This is the old stitch. Just let that working yarn fall away. Okay? Put it back up on the rod. If you want to back up, this is the best way of backing up. Just all these crosses you see, whether it's the bow tie or the opposite, that's the stitch from the previous row. And that's it for today.